Hello there, this is Catherine with Enfolded Heart Music. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of the walkthrough tutorial for Touch of Compassion. If you are viewing this video first, know that again, this is the second part, so there is a first part. If you would like to learn this song through these videos, go ahead and check out in the description. I'm going to include a link for the first part, and you'll need to watch that first before the second part. If you have already watched that first part and are here for the second part, welcome back. I hope the first section has been wonderful and delightful for you and has gone well in your practice. Last time we did parts A, B, and C, and today we're going to do the bridge, which is sections D and E. So that's what we're going to jump into. Any other introductory notes are in that first video. So again, if this is the first video you're watching, I'd really encourage you to watch that first one and have a little bit better idea of what I do in these videos and where to access sheet music and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to do a little bit of a review and then we will get into the bridge on those new sections. So here we go. Okay, so let's do a quick review of what we did last time so that we can have some context of where the new information is going to be fitting in. I'll do a quick playthrough of where you should be, just so that it's crystal clear of what we went through last time, how that should all come together, and where you should be while you're watching this video. If you're not quite at this place yet, then it'd be wise to go back and still work on the stuff that we did in the first video, especially because that's really the meat of the song, and we'll come back in different variations a little bit later. So make sure you've got that down before watching this second part. So last time we did parts A, B, and C, and that ended us in measure 50. I mentioned last time that after part C, part A returns again. And so then we have what I would just label as A2, so A sort of second time that it appears. That occurs from 51 all the way through 66. There is a small variation in that, which I'll go over in a moment. I'll play it first, and then I'll play the whole thing, and then I'll make sure to kind of specify where that one little difference is, but otherwise it's exactly the same. Then today what we're going to be focusing on, the new content, is sections D and E, and that will take us from 67 through to 97. 67 to 97. Then all we will have to do in part 3 will be the rest of the piece. Will be a part C that is repeated again with a very slight variation. And then we also have what I've called section F, and this is kind of a play on part B actually again. Similar types of things, but it has an ending quality to it, just the way that the notes ascend and then end at the top there. So that'll be in the third video, but for this one we're going to do just the bridge. As I've mentioned in previous videos, one of the ways to understand the bridge, just so you have a good idea of the flow of the piece, is we've had, right, A, B, and C. A and B being very similar to each other in certain respects. Even though they're not exactly the same by any means, they have patterns that reflect each other, and so there's a familiarity with that. Part C stays in a similar pattern in certain ways, but it moves higher into the octave. So rather than being around here, we'll do here, it moves up more in this range. That's part C. So more variation than A and B. We have A, B, C, and then return back to A again to just remind us of what's the main theme of the song. Then what I usually do, and what many pieces will do, is to have something much more different in a kind of bridge. And this is so that the listener doesn't get fatigued with the same patterns, whether it be rhythmic or whether it be the notes themselves or the keys. So we'll have a variation there. In this bridge, it'll be quite different than the rest of the piece. The first part of it in particular. The second part will be more similar to part C, and then it will flow into part C, and we'll talk about that in the third video that I'll do for this. So again, the bridge has a quality that makes the listener say, this is something different, such that it's of interest, but then also when you return back to the original themes, there's a freshness and a familiarity to that, which is very beautiful. It's kind of like coming home. It's very comforting, and but you get an appreciation for it once you've left. Returning back home, you both receive the familiarity and the newness of it at the same time. There's something very special about that. So that's kind of the idea with most of the pieces. It travels in that way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I think I'm just going to go ahead and play where you should be at this point. So it'll be parts A, B, C, and then A. I'll do this without a metronome. As I've said before, I would encourage you to practice with a metronome, to a certain degree, but moving outside of that so that you can hear and listen to more than just how steady am I playing the piece, but can focus more on musicality and dynamics and other aspects like that. So I'll go ahead and play through that, and then we will get into some new content. So here we go. That was part A. Part B. Part C. Okay, so that is where you should be at the end of the part that we did now almost 2 weeks ago. The one very small difference that we have in part A when it comes around that second time is in measures 64 and 65. You'll see that there's an E and an A, and that's something that we didn't have before. So what you will have is in measure 63, you'll have ended on the A. Okay, so again, that was 63, 64, 65, and 66. Let me do that one more time for you. Okay, so just one extra little phrase in there in the right hand. So that's it. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into part D now. Okay, part D, it's quite short actually compared to some of the other sections that we've been doing. And it also repeats quite a bit, so it probably won't take us too long to get through. So we have from measures 67 to 74, that's part D. Now again, this is going to be different than everything else you've done before. And the first thing that we can notice just by looking at the sheet music is that the left hand is different for the first time in the entire piece. It's the only time that the left hand does something different. And again, this is one of the characteristics of a bridge. It does something quite different, usually in key and in rhythmic pattern than any other part of the piece. So this is a pretty good example of that. We're going to do the left hand second because the right hand is more active than it has been before. So in part one, I talked quite a bit about how the left hand is really sustaining the rhythm, is sustaining the tempo, is sustaining sort of like the water flowing in the background, and then dropping pebbles or something into that water. That would be the right hand, the dropping pebbles. In this section, that's not the case. And so let's go ahead and start with the right hand because it has the melody and is more active than the left hand is. The left hand accompanies the right hand in a way that's less sustaining than the rest of the piece. So we're going to break this right in half, I think. Yeah, let's do that. Right in half because it repeats itself. And let's look at measures 67 through 70. So just finding the notes on this. This whole section on D will be the same for 16 and 19 string lyres. It does not go above the A on there. So we have just finished with being at an A down here. We went from E to A, a nice fifth. Okay. You're going to start section D on this E. So it might be helpful to keep that in mind as you're moving forward. Once you find E in measure 64 to do that part, just keep your eye on that. You're going to need to switch your finger, but the E is where you're going to start. So we'll have E, G, E. So again, that's E, G, E. Then we have E, D, G, D. Then we have D, moving down a little bit, C, D, E, up to G again, and then finishing on A. So I again have my metronome out, and I'm going to bump this down to 100 again, so we have it nice and slow, and we will do the rhythmic pattern for this section. There we go, we're on E again, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's the right hand. Those first two measures are going to repeat themselves exactly in just a moment, but we'll get there at that time. So let's look at the left hand. Though the rhythms are different, the position is the same. So we have still the same A and G general position, but rather than utilizing these 4 notes, we're only going to be utilizing these first 3. Okay, now I've realized, I apologize, there is one error in here. So those of you who have the sheet music, you'll need to mark this. Otherwise, I will make changes on it and upload a new version of it. But the error is in measure 68, and then it repeats itself in 72. It says G, A, G, and it should be G, B, A in both of those. So the G is correct, but the A should be a B and the G should be an A. So I placed those a little bit too high. I'm sorry, a little bit too low. I placed those a little bit too low. Okay, I apologize. You think you have it totally free of error and then you find something. Every time I go through this, I always find something. Okay. Not every time. It feels like that. Anyways, okay, so that's a small correction there. So let's look at the notes with those corrections in there for the left hand. So we have in 67, we have A, C, B, and then we drop down to G, and this should be B, A. Then A will repeat itself and just hold while the right hand moves up. And then in 70, we end with a similar pattern in regards to the notes, but different in rhythm, where we have our A, B, C, E, and then we'll drop all the way down to the A in 71. Okay? So let's listen to how this sounds with the proper rhythms. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay. Now let's see how they sound together. This section again from 67 to 70. Metronome on 100. We have A in the left hand, and we have our E. If you have your strings colored at all like a harp, you'll have that F, and so you have a nice little reference to find your E right there. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we finished half of part D. Now let's look ahead to the rest of it from 71 to 74. 71 and 72 are exactly the same as what we just did, so we can breeze right over that. If you'd like, you could pause here and practice just going from 67 all the way through 72, since that should be, since it repeats itself, it might be a nice thing to do. But we're going to start for the walkthrough, we're going to start in 73 and end at 74. So again, I'm going to take that left hand out because the right hand is more active. Let's start with that. We have starting on our E again, but rather than going more up, you're going to descend all the way down. So we have our E, D, C, B, A, and then repeat that A. So again, we have E, D, C, B, and A. A is repeated one more time. What I would do to practice this section is you'll see that there's a D in the most previous measure, which is measure 72. I would include that because it's part of that phrase. So let's do it with the metronome. I'm going to include that D so that you can hear what it sounds like. It'd make much more sense to practice it as a phrase than being strict about starting on the measure. So here we go. Pick up to 73 and 74. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now for fingering with this, there's a number of different ways you could do it. You could do it where you have, I never used my pinky finger, my 5 finger. It's too weak and short. It just doesn't work very well. The way that I tend to do it is using my pointer finger on that D, the 3 for the E, and I'll have my thumb on the C. And then I cross over to have my middle finger on the B. Okay. You could do it something like starting instead with the D. You could start on your middle finger. If that's more comfortable for you. What I would not suggest is doing something where you use your pointer finger to walk down it. So I would not do something like that's a good way to miss a string and to not have very even volume with each of your strings. So having one crossover, but otherwise having your hand in the same position is how I'd recommend doing that. Okay, so the left hand is very simple here. Well, I shouldn't have said that. I was just looking at the A. Okay, so what you'll have with the left hand is we have this A that we've ended on, and then that's measure 73, and then 74 we have our same pattern that we've had the whole time through again, where we have A, B, C, E, and C again. So how does the left hand sound? Just these two measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's put the two hands together. I'll do that just once, and then I'll do all of section D together, both hands. I'll do that one twice. So just measures 73 and 74 on 100 still. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that is section D. So take your time, work on that, and come back when you're ready for the rest of the bridge, which is part E. Okay, we are back now for part E. This section has a lot more similarity to the rest of the piece than D just did. So if D felt a little bit difficult, that may be because it's very different than what you've been practicing for the other sections of the piece. E is kind of a morph of section C. There's a lot of similar notes, and that's one of the reasons it leads nicely into part C, which we'll see. That's sort of a pun. Okay, that we'll see later. Sorry, that was super cheesy, but that's okay. All right, so E goes from 75 all the way through 97. Okay, it's long because there's a lot of breaks. So just as we did before, let's take a look at the left hand first. I'm going to break this into a couple of sections. We can do it here. Yeah. And here. Okay, so let's just look for the time being, even just broadly looking, very, very broadly looking. You can see if you've got the sheet music in front of you, if you just compare the left hand in this section to the rest of the piece, you'll be able to easily see, wow, much of it is very much the same. So we're going to focus on just 75 through 86 for right now. Okay. The next part right after that is very similar, but I think that might be a little bit too big of a chunk. But all I want to point out is that in 75 we have, looking at just the left hand, we have that A, which is, I included in D as well when we had this. Let's let that ring. And then we have 76, 77, 78, and 79. They all have that same A pattern. Okay, it's exactly the same. Only in, let's see, 78, 79, and 80 do we have a change in the left hand. It goes down to the G, but same pattern. Okay, and that is the same in the next three measures, so 80, 81, and 82. Then in 83, we have a pattern that we've seen already before, where rather than going all the way up and then coming back down, sorry, that was a little sloppy, we only do the first three notes. So this is 83. And that's it. Following that, the rest of this section that we're looking at for the time being, looking at measures 84, 85, and 86, that right hand moves back up to A and continues its pattern. Okay? So that's going to be exactly the same. You know what? I changed my mind. Let's cut it for right now at 84. I think that'll make a little bit more sense. 84. So we're going to go from the beginning of the section 75 through 84. So that's the left hand. You already know that. So we don't need to spend time on that. Let's take a look at the right hand. Okay. So in the right hand, we have that same theme that we've had before where the right hand kind of drops in with the left hand going nice and steady. Okay, so if you have a 16 string lyre, this is the main section where you're going to have some difference because I play a lot up here compared to what we've done before. But I'm going to start with the 19 string notes and then we'll switch to the 16 string notes. So for this first part of E, in the 19, you have C, B, G, and A. And as I mentioned before, I would not use the same finger. That's not a very helpful way to utilize, that you have 5 fingers. And so try to use this as best as you can, even if it takes a little bit more coordination and work to do that. So I would have these 3 fingers be the primary movers. Okay. So that's for the 19 string. I'm going to keep going and then I'll backtrack for the 16 string. After that phrase, it rests for a few measures, and then we have in 79, we have A, G, E, D, E, back up to G. So again, that's A, G, E, D, E, and G. Now that's the same for a 16 or 19 string, but I'll loop round to that. Okay, and then we have in 83 the same thing that we had before. Well, we have C, B, G, A. All right. Probably could have stopped before that, but that's okay. All right, so that's 19 string. 16 string, because you don't have these top 2 notes, what you're going to do is start on that E again that we've been familiar with, and you will go from E to G, back to E, up to A. Again. Then you will have the same thing that the 19 string has in measures 79 and 80. Again, that's A, G, E, D, E, G. And then just as the 19 repeated its notes and rhythms, the 16 string will do the same. So again, you will have from E to G, down to E again, and up to A. All right. So let's do that with the proper rhythm. I'm going to flip this page because it's the same. Oops, I closed my metronome. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go from measure 75 through 84. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. going to stop there. Let's add in that left hand. You can replay that many times if that's helpful for you, but I'm going to add in the left hand because, again, it helps us to know even more intuitively where that right hand should come in. Okay, same section with both hands. We'll do this twice over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop there. Okay, let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Stop there. Okay, so that ended in measure 84. 84. Okay. Now let's look at, you see that 84, then we have 85 and 86 where the right hand rests. We have that left hand still going in the same pattern. Okay. And we could have cut this in a different spot. I probably should have, to be honest. I probably should have cut it at 82 because this is where the repetition is. So we played once, then we had, and then we returned to, and now we're gonna have something different. So the different part is what we're doing now. All right, this is measures 87 and 88. We have A, this is the same for both 19 and 16 string. We have A, G, E. That's the same as we've had before. But this time we're going to do D, E, and back to D. So if you compare measures 87 and 88 to measures 79 and 80, you'll notice the only difference is the last note. At the first one, we end on G. On the second one, you end on D. So the first one is like this. The second one is, all right, so that's also the proper rhythm. Let's do just the right hand with the rhythm, 87 and 88. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, now I'm going to do, for clarity's sake, I'm going to start in measure 83 and play all the way to 90. All right, so this is, again, from the beginning of this section, section E, that is measure 75, we have, you could cut it in half. You have theme A, variation, theme A again, second variation. Okay, so we're going to do just the second variation. Again, measures 83 through, what did I say, 90. All right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's finish off section E. And this will be the last thing that we do. I'm sorry, is this E? It is E, okay, okay. F is later. This will be the end of part 2, so it's a shorter video. We did by far most of the work in part 1, so hopefully that wasn't a sort of intimidation factor. All right, so let's finish this off. What this last section from 91 to the end of measure 97, what it basically does is it travels down all the way from in a certain sense from A to A, the whole octave, right? A to A, but does it in sort of a stair-step way. Okay, so it goes, you know, from one note up, down, then down a note, up, down, and then another note, and it goes up, down, or down, up, down. Okay, and then it has a little variation. So it sort of is trickling down in a certain way. And then in the last three measures, we have some just big, nice whole notes where we have our fifth and an octave. So here's our fifth, and then the octave. Okay. And then part C, the second time around, is where that starts right after there. Okay. So the left hand is slightly different, but let's go ahead. I'm going to do it like I did before. We're going to start with the right hand and then add the left hand in here because it's more dominant in this spot. So let's cut this right in half. Well, it's 7, so you can't quite do it in half, but half enough. All right, we're going to stop at the end of measure 94. Let's look at the notes here. This is a little bit more challenging in the sense of you have more notes, one right after the other, or more or less, than you have the rest of the piece pretty much. So we have just ended on a D, and then we had 2 measures of break. Your first note is going to be E. It's going to go up to A, E, D, E, D, and D, C, D, C, B, A, B, C, B, G, and then in 95, it's A. Now, you should be very familiar with this, actually. This is, let me see if I can find it. See if it doesn't take too long. My pencil needs to just go down there. Yeah. So, for example, in part A, this is a good example of another part creeping back in again to have that familiarity ring back in for the listener. I am going to go through it again a little bit more step by step because it's been a while since we visited it. But if you look at part A at measures 9 through 13, you'll notice I think it's exactly the same. Yes, it is exactly the same as what we've ended with. And we had it at the end of part A and the end of part B. So you've played it twice there. Then part A repeated itself. So we played it a third time. And now this is the 4th time we're going to be playing this pattern. It's probably the most common pattern in the song if I think about it. But we're coming at it from a slightly different angle than we have before. We have different notes that precede it. So let's take our time with it. We're going to do it with the metronome, hands separate once, and then, the right hand separate once, then hands together once, because it is the same. And then I'll do all of part E, and we'll call it a day for this second part of the tutorial. Okay, so right hand only from 91 through 94. And since it's the same, I've changed my mind. Since it's the same, let's go ahead and add those whole notes in as well. That's the only difference in this section. All right, so here we go. 91 through the end of 97. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now that's right hand. Let's add that left hand in there. We are starting on a G. I just messed that up. We're starting on a G rather than an A. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our pattern again. Okay, let's do that one more time. Starting on the G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's put all of section E together, again from measures 95, all the way through 97. All right, here we go. We'll do it twice. Let's go ahead and bump this up to 110. And then we'll call it a day. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, just to give a final note, since it's a pretty short video, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. It feels very short. Just so you have an idea, so we've had the bridge. We had A, B, C, A. Then we had D and E. And then you return back to C. And there is a small difference at the very end, but I'll cover that next time. But just so you have some context of how those two go together, those two being E and then C, it's something like this. Measure 95. That's the beginning of C right there. Right, and then you have... All right, and that's all the same. So if you'd like to go ahead and venture into that as well, that'd be great. Again, just take a note. If you're curious where the difference is, it is in measure 116 and 117. That's where the difference is there. But at this point, you can play nearly the entire piece. The only thing we're missing is that very end little run up and a little lingering up at the top as the song kind of fades away. So you've got essentially all the way through the second time C repeats itself, which ends in 117. So that should be plenty for you. Again, as always, you're welcome to voice any questions if there's something that's not clear. And certainly welcome to continue to throw out any requests for these walkthrough tutorials for any particular song. I can't remember the next one that I'm going to do. I'll just take a look at that little survey and soon create another one so that I can see if there's any other songs that would be of interest and benefit to folks. So anyways, I hope it's wonderful. I hope it's very fun for you, and I hope it's going well. So thank you for hanging in there. Thanks for watching this video, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if there's any other way I can be of help and support to you. So God bless. May the peace of Christ be with you, and many thanks again.